Ecosystem Exchange is the podcast series by T6 Ecosystems that explore different themes shaping our world. Each season spotlights a new focus, bringing together experts for engaging discussions. Through this exchange of ideas, we promote a sense of intellectual exploration, interdisciplinary collaboration, and actionable insights. Welcome to Ecosystem Exchange, a podcast by T6 Ecosystems where we explore the intersection of research, innovation, and real life. This episode is part of the series The Power of Art, Science and Technology, an European Perspective. I'm Simona De Rosa, partner and researcher at T6 Ecosystems, and today I have the pleasure to have here with me Veronika Liebl. Welcome, Veronika, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Hello, Simona. So happy to be here.
Veronika is currently the director of the European cooperation at Ars Electronica, where she leads the European collaboration project. And she's one of the key figures of the S+T+ARTS, science, technology, and the arts ecosystem. We introduced the S+T+ARTS framework in our previous episode, but let's remind that the S+T+ARTS is an initiative of the European Commission launched under the Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Programme to support collaboration between art, scientists, engineering, and researchers. So, Veronika, before we start discussing the fascinating world of art, science, and tech, could you please start by introducing yourself with a particular focus on your career path leading up to your current role of Director of the European Collaboration at Ars Electronica?
Absolutely, I'm happy to do so. I'm currently the festival director, so in my main function, I am designing and implementing a wonderful annual festival called Ars Electronica each year with an amazing team dedicated to all topics of the intersection between arts, society, technology, and science. We are, of course, one of the most important platforms in the field of digital transformation when it comes also to understanding what that means for society, what that also means for all us individuals. And we always host this festival at the beginning of September. So this is also a big invitation to everyone to come join us in Linz in the center of Europe. Or how did I get here? I started, I would say, quite unusual in this field, actually from an innovation background. So I have an economics background with a focus also on innovation management and non-profit management, and started at Ars Electronica also specifically with the intention to enlarge our European collaboration. And that's what I'm doing also now since 15 years, to build impact projects basically for Ars Electronica, which bring together these worlds, bring together art, science, technology, bring together stakeholders from various disciplines in European funded projects. And that was and is still my main passion, to open worlds to people who might perceive also maybe the arts not as the first choice, but then also convince them that arts has a fantastic role and also capability of really imagining new futures. And this is a very exciting job, I have to say.
And you talk about passion, and I think this is also very clear when you talk and when we meet each time for the project purposes, that you are very passionate about your work. And I think you also discussed already a bit about your what drives you. So what's your commitment in fostering arts, science, and technology? And this aspect of shaping new futures is really key and inspiring, I would say, also for the people around you and working with you as well.
I'm really driven by the fact that we want and we need to broaden the conversations we are leading on expert circles really to a broader society. This is for me the most important aspect, and it becomes more important every single second. particularly in these days where also the trust in our big institutions and in the innovative power of democracy is eroding. We really need to ensure that we are not only discussing this in lighthouses, we're not only discussing the big transformation of our times in expert circles, but we are actually really involving the broader society, and not only in how to adopt then the transformation, but really making sure that from the very first moments, also in understanding how we want to shape transformation, how we actually want together to build a society, also how to then cover and carry the consequences of the decisions. That is something we need to lead on a broader basis. And as a cultural institution, we do have, of course, a fantastic opportunity here to also involve many more people beyond expert circles. And that is something I am doing very, very passionate.
And we hope also that the podcast will be an opportunity to enlarge. I mean, in T6, we also really think that those kind of discussions should be enlarged, and everyone should be aware of what is coming, which are these kind of initiatives that can really support new way of thinking. And this is also why we are doing it, really. It's one of our purposes, so bringing the conversation out of our network. You said that you are in the field since 15 years now. So how have the world of art and technology and digital technology evolved over the past decade? So how do you see it transforming over the time?
The transformation is extremely fast. And it is extremely obvious, I would say. What we've seen at Ars Electronica, even much more beyond the time when I joined, but Ars Electronica as an institution started in 1979. So we actually celebrate in 4 years our 50th anniversary. And at the very beginning, digital artists were much more really exploring digital technologies, also trying to push maybe the boundaries, trying to understand also computing power, trying to understand what could be done really artistically. Today, the role of digital artists, of artists in this field, is a much different one. And we see that it is more important to involve them really in understanding the consequences, in understanding also the effects digital technologies play in our everyday lives, from, of course, work conditions, but also in areas of care, for example, or in areas which do affect the broader society. And here, artists have this fantastic capability of really having a 360-degree thinking and viewpoint on things, so they do understand also and can communicate also the interrelationships between effects much better than many of us in our own bubbles. And we see that this becomes much more also the role of artists today, also as a critical engagement. And I think this critical engagement is extremely essential, not necessarily because it is destructive, but it can unleash also a very constructive power of imagining new ways of doing things, of hacking technologies to use it in a completely different way for the good, or in also criticizing the way certain products are using, for example, our personal data in order to take over agency again. And those are today much more the roles artists are interested in, and artists are in our field actively working in. And of course, still they have also, due to many decades of working in the field of digital technologies, they have a fantastic they built a fantastic competence in deploying digital technologies. And for many companies, it is of course also interesting to engage them also in future projects. But I think what we really observe most dominant is this role from first decades ago, really as an institution, also us testing technologies, being also somehow an investigator what that means and what technologies really can achieve, over then many years of really educating and creating an understanding of technologies and how we can actually deploy them today to much more encompass understanding also how we want to shape them together as a society, and regaining also the agency of having a discussion of how technologies really need to be shaped in a European value sense.
And how do you insert interdisciplinarity in this context?
I mean, Ars Electronica was always built on the principle of interdisciplinarity. So our founders were interdisciplinary. The founders of Ars Electronica came from 4 different disciplines. We have this subtitle of Art Technology Society. So we never look into one discipline at all alone. We always try to combine the disciplines, and we are tremendously convinced that today's challenges are far too complex to be able to address only by one discipline. And I think we do all agree that in particular the complexities of the challenges we are facing today do require also completely new types of solutions and overcoming also assumptions which worked maybe in the past, but which are really working partly against us today. And that means we can only understand the complexity of the decisions we are making when involving different disciplines and the broader society. That is part of the DNA, and this is today also part of the DNA of many artistic projects. So when you read, for example, credits in our field of artistic projects, you will always see that they work with many collaborators from many different fields, from technology, but also research, consultation, and in many fields, of course, also from the broader society.
But we, of course, we do agree that interdisciplinarity is key, even because challenges are evolving, as you said, are even more complex, and we need complex approaches, and interdisciplinarity can be even complex. I mean, not always it's straightforward, not always it's easy, and bringing together people from different backgrounds or aggregating different skills is not always a smooth path, I would say. So what for you, observing all these realities and initiatives, what makes a truly impactful art science and art tech and science collaboration? Which are the ingredients that need to be in place to have something really impactful?
Well, look, I think there are many expectations behind such interdisciplinary collaborations, and I would not per se exclude any of them as not right. I think it is a matter of what you want to achieve, and art science has become today also a very blurry terminology for many, many different kinds of expectations. And within the STARTS initiative, we've also did some effort also in structuring what types of art science tech methodologies are out there linked to which kind of impact pathway. And I think first you need to understand what type an expectation and an output you really want to have. You can have, of course, something in terms of science communication, where it is quite straightforward in many dimensions, also in engaging someone who is really capable of making the topic more explainable to a broader public. And there it's not necessarily the case that all the stakeholders from the different disciplines need to have the same amount of input in the collaboration. And this is perfectly fine. We do also see that in many cases, art and science collaborations could be led by one party and to some extent consulted by other disciplines. So you achieve the outcome which you, of course, for us, the most exciting ones are those where you generate joint new knowledge. So basically, you're really working on an eye-to-eye level. You are also collaborating really jointly, also with significant resources brought in from all sides. So you will be able to discover understandings which no party alone, working alone, would be able to discover. And that only works in an actual collaboration, in time reserved also for bilateral and eye-to-eye collaboration. And those are the moments typically also where the unexpected outcomes are achieved at the beginning. And that is something what I always warn our collaborators, that of course you can have an idea in which direction a collaboration should go to. You should have that, but when you are entering this process, when you're entering also the conversations, then it might actually be the case that something completely new emerges out of this. And those are the exciting moments. Those are the moments of trouble. We always often see that this is, of course, sometimes also coming out from frictions. So points where the collaborators are not necessarily agreeing or are not necessarily yet on the same pathway. And here in STARTS, we also bring in this type of innovation catalyst, so mediators between the disciplines who can basically lead the conversation, but also challenge both conversation partners in achieving really something new out of this. So I always say this, I mean, you said it, the frictions in this process is also the problems within art and science projects are there. Those projects are never easy, never. And this is something you need to dive into. You need to embrace. You need to get into these friction processes, into the very deep discussions, and also to get something new out. Those are the most exciting ones, but I also really want to emphasize that there are plenty of different expectations which can be absolutely justifiable for such collaborations. The most important thing is that you engage someone who really has a knowledge about how to structure these kind of processes and how to guide someone through. At the very beginning, it is always a matter of agreeing what should be the outcomes, what kind of resources everyone can bring into, what are the expectations in terms of impact. And those are the elements when you those are the elements you definitely need to ensure at the very beginning of such collaborations are aligned.
This is also very interesting because it's case specific. I mean that every initiative, every project, and we observed it doing running the impact assessment for the STARTS Prize and now for the impact of the resiliencies of the STARTS Eco project, which is running now. You cannot put the point in and say, these are the impact, these are the expectation, because every artist is different and every process is different. And maybe it's such complex that maybe the artists or the researchers engaged at the beginning, they have an expectation, but at the end, it turns around that it's something beautiful and super interesting comes out from a different path that they expected. So I think also the capability to understand that flexibility, modularity is needed here when we talk about the impact or the expectation of the framework is needed, because we cannot say very clearly at the beginning, because everything really can happen. We also discussed enlarging a bit, so going out from the scientific, let's say, bubble. And I know that you are also engaged in projects related purely to citizen science. I'm thinking to Impetus, another European project. How do you see the citizens' dimension in STARTS? I mean, are they already well engaged, or citizens and wider audience should be better involved in the related STARTS initiatives? Is just to put it broadly, is public engagement a challenge or an opportunity for the STARTS framework?
I think many artists are already looking into these areas and are trying also to develop certain strategies where they can involve citizens. In many projects, we see that, of course, rather at the end of the creation process. So in many cases, we do see the citizens' engagement then, and the participatory elements of society more in the mediation. And here I think it could be very interesting to learn also from methodologies developed in citizen science and open research areas on how to involve the broader society already at the creation phases. What would be definitely interesting is to specifically also fund and support artists more in involving society really at the early stages of the development and in the early stages of artistic research. That is simply a problem of capacities and resources to many extent. These are processes which are not necessarily super easy to implement for artists themselves, but this could be also something which could be fostered really through, again, facilitators, but here facilitators more in the thinking of really cultural institutions who typically really have good outreach also to citizens communities and allow here for a more integrated process. I would really advise here to learn from citizen science communities and maybe try to actually establish here also again more bridges between artists and already existing citizen science communities so they actually work together and also understand how artists and arts as a tool, as a practice can be actually then a valuable resource for citizen science. Both are there. I mean, we see that in both domains there are small beginnings, or there are, of course, also very established artists and communities which are doing this already, but not to that extent we love to see. And I think there is a lot of possibility of bringing the both communities even closer together.
Because so as T6 is also very much engaged in citizen science project, I also tend to see that the two communities are a bit knowing each other, collaborating, but the structured way in which citizen science is done in the community and the artists and science tech work together, if we can make the bridge even more stable and concrete, will be beneficial for both communities. Shifting from the citizens to high-level policy makers, in the STARTS Eco project, we are now working to organize a policy event that will be in Brussels, hosted by the European Parliament at the end of June, where we will discuss the innovation and the potential opportunities for STARTS as a catalyst of transformation in challenging times. I'm wondering, what do you think, what do you hope to see from such event? How important is to engage European policymakers with this dimension of the community of the STARTS that we discussed so far?
I think it's tremendously important to look into the learnings from STARTS. I mean, STARTS as an initiative has now more than 10 years of consolidated knowledge from hundreds of organizations all over Europe. We brought out 300 STARTS Prize projects, several hundred residencies, and so many practitioners all over Europe worked really very actively on advancing STARTS. Of course, in the last 10 years, we focused very much bringing out practices. So we focused very much on delivering here projects, on making sure that we can bring also this kind of collaborations to every part of Europe, and making sure that people are also experiencing firsthand what it means to implement such collaborations. And from this now different time starts in a way for STARTS. It means also learning from that, also building, of course, a set of resources and a set of consolidated knowledge from these many practices. And for me, is tremendously important, that starts at this point in time also is not remaining static, is in fact maybe moving also from an initiative really into a more structural basis where we can also service other initiatives in their understanding how to build this kind of interdisciplinary ecosystems. And I think for STARTS, we've seen, for example, we've really delivered and worked on how to build concrete pillars and actions also to strengthen Europe's capacity for ethical digital innovation. That is a very, very strong pillar which can also serve currently innovation making that supports digital sovereignty in Europe and helps also understanding citizens on how to shape that. Another proven mechanism I would definitely see in involving citizens in understanding also the impacts of digital and environmental transformation, something which is, for example, extremely important also for the new European Bauhaus community. And in last years, we have been also very effective in trying to build local capacities, trying to build local communities through STARTS regional centers, in understanding also which kind of actors are already driving the field in many dimensions and can harvest maybe also this collaborative effort on really in regions which are not necessarily capital regions in Europe. And those are all areas which are pertinent to many European policies and could really feed also the understanding of how to advance future framework programs further. So at that point in time, I'm really keen on sharing tools, practices, methodologies developed within STARTS, and I hope that we can also as a community, as this STARTS family, which we call sometimes ourselves, also ensure in the next 5 years that we really share this for the benefit of others. I think this is something which needs to go into research, into new European Bauhaus communities, into also circles like digital innovation hubs, all these communities currently working on the digital future of Europe and on making and agreeing also what kind of value system should be behind such a future in Europe. Here, practices developed within STARTS can be really of value. I'm not saying this is the only one, but it should be acknowledged that the demonstrators developed within the last 10 years of STARTS really have a fantastic role model to play also for others.
Thank you very much. These, I think, are also very relevant input for the STARTS family that probably will listen to this episode because we all need to work in the same direction to make possible that we move from an initiative to serve other initiatives that, as you told already, but also to be a self-critic in terms of policy communication. So what we should better communicate to policymakers to facilitate, to encourage this shift from adopting STARTS as a silos, I would say, to something more transversal also in the adoption of local, national, and regional level. What we have to push as community to policymakers, what they have to know, what they have to learn from us more clearly.
I think that is something everyone in the community needs to answer themselves. But for myself and for Ars Electronica, I am deeply convinced, as I said at the very beginning, that we really need to work on a future which is shared by citizens, not necessarily because it's difficult to get them in the boat. I believe that citizens actually do drive much more bottom-up initiatives than we often acknowledge or that we see. But there is a distinct lack or a gap between these bottom-up initiatives and what really arrives in policy. And this is for me a tremendous problem currently, that we need to bridge also bottom-up initiatives. We need to embrace grassroots initiatives throughout Europe and make sure that in this very fast time, in also times where things are changing in a speed which is unprecedented, we make sure that we are not losing society in addressing this. And for me, it is most essential to demonstrate also that through artistic involvement, also through this creative, sometimes funny approaches, we can ensure also a wider participation. And in many dimensions, I also think we need different solutions in Europe. We can't act still on the same assumptions. We can't just think short time. We really need radical and very frightening change in order to make sure that this planet stays livable, in order to make sure also that we as a democracy are surviving. And here it is also necessary to think more ahead. The solutions which are often dealt with in innovation projects are more of incremental nature, and this might be okay for certain environments, but we as a society, we as Europe, need bigger steps. And here we also need to allow ourselves to imagine this kind of future in more distant time frames. And this is something where arts particularly really has a very strong core competence. And that is something we, I think, need to make also politicians more or just clearer, that this is something which might be, of course, frightening to some extent, but this is absolutely needed. And I think many understand, of course, already the power of artists' culture, also to bring in culture, to make sure that we embrace also cultural diversity and engage the wider society. But then it's also a matter of taking risks to some extent in taking long-term solutions more than just the immediate ones.
While you were talking about society and grassroots initiatives, it came to my mind the huge effort of the CAPS. Do you remember the Collaborative Awareness Platforms initiative funded by the European Commission for several years, where they had and they reached very good results, and they were really coming from the ground. So I also think that a more local scale addressed by S+T+ARTS initiatives, working a community-based approach would make very much sense. I have a final question for you. So times are changing, and so researchers and research, where do you see S+T+ARTS in 10 years? Or if you could shape its future, what would you hope for it to become?
I'd hope we have hundreds of S+T+ARTS centers all over Europe, S+T+ARTS centers which are celebrating maybe once per year really a European-wide S+T+ARTS Day as a practice, which goes much beyond the current initiative only, but really as a methodology to learn and to work together. And I really believe it starts with changing our educational models. We bring S+T+ARTS methodologies already to schools and very much also in the academic world at Ars Electronica. So we try really to learn together already these kind of methodologies at early ages, so you understand also how you can then roll out these kind of practices once you're in work environments. But I would really see this as something which is practiced really across all regions and cities. So having S+T+ARTS educators, so to say, S+T+ARTS ambassadors, which were previously also supported through educational programs. We are also discussing often about the S+T+ARTS master or something like a vocational training opportunity, for example. But as we just discussed now, I think the most important part and most important element for the future would be also securing that this is not only the couple of lighthouse projects between industry and artists, but really goes into the regions, goes into the city for urban development, also for the immediate challenges of the society. I see a big future also in all questions of care and health. Those are also the areas where I believe starts in particular in this also understanding of how do we want as a society work with technologies, how also what is humanity in the age of digital. And here I see a big opportunity and hope that starts managed in 10 years really to become more a transversal methodology than just an initiative. Of course, my heart says I want to keep that initiative going for the next decades, and we as a community will exist anyway. I'm very, very convinced that this gigantic STARTS family of hundreds of organizations all over Europe will fight and will continue the legacy. But I think it is also time to extend this initiative to a wider framework and make sure that many of our institutions are deploying this kind of methodologies also in their everyday work. And we do see that there is already a beginning with many such regional initiatives. So we do see already in many regions in Europe that STARTS or STARTS-like centers are forming, and I think we should also align here more with the new European Bauhaus communities, and with that I'm quite confident that we will at least go to some extent in such a direction.
Thank you, Veronika. You have been very clear in drafting a bit the line of how STARTS can keep having his own identity, not losing it, but put itself in other streams of research and innovation, which would be definitely beneficial also for the others to encourage this bridge. And I think it's also been very nice for us, for all the community of the STARTS family, to listen it, because each one of us can really be inspired by your words in each project to do a piece in this direction. So thank you very, very much for accepting the invitation and for being so kind to respond to my question. And I hope this will be beneficial for the community and other researchers around Europe. Thank you
so much.
That's it for this episode of Ecosystem Exchange. If this has sparked your curiosity, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Follow the 6 ecosystems for updates on upcoming topics, guests, and exclusive insights. You can also visit our website to learn more about the research projects shaping our world today. Thank you for joining the exchange. See you in the next episode.